My name is Sonia Singh, and I'm an organizer with the Workers' Action Centre, and I want to thank the members of the Standing Committee for hearing our deputation today, and just acknowledge my colleague Marsha Gillespie, who's joining me. The Workers' Action Centre is a worker-based centre that is located in Toronto. We run phone lines, we work on the front lines, supporting workers who have faced workers' rights violations who do not have union protection. So every day we are hearing the kinds of issues and concerns that you've heard from many of the other deputants today from across the GTA. The people that we get calls from, our membership, are working in precarious jobs. And as you've heard from many others, these kinds of precarious jobs, part-time, temporary, low-wage work, have been increasing gradually over the last years, now becoming the standard, with more than 1/3 of jobs in Ontario falling into this definition of precarious or non-standard work. So we're here today to speak in support of Bill 77 because we feel that this bill is a step in the right direction to build a voice at work and to expand protection for workers who fall in this category of precarious jobs. I want to tell you about the people that we work with at the Workers' Action Centre. People who are working hard to support themselves and their families, the majority of whom are women in precarious jobs. More than half of people in precarious work are people of color, and a disproportionate number are newcomers to Canada. These are not people who are working part-time jobs by choice. The trend has been for more and more work, more and more jobs that have been created to be part-time jobs that pay less and that essentially offer no job security. And under our current minimum wage, even when people are working full-time hours, they're still earning an income that puts them below the poverty line. So these people, our members of the Workers' Action Centre and others across Ontario, are doing the hardest and most necessary jobs in our society. They are keeping office towers clean, they're preparing and serving food, they're providing security, they're looking after families, they're manufacturing goods. They are doing critical jobs that we need in our economy. And as you might be able to imagine, our members, many of the people that we work with, are very stressed out. They are, and also the third or more of Ontarians working in these jobs, working harder and harder and earning less and less, often in unsafe conditions, and often not knowing if they are even going to get paid. Never mind whether they're going to have a job next month or even next week. And despite this growth in precarious work, our labor laws have not caught up and are still based on an outdated model of a standard employment relationship developed over 50 years ago. So we're seeing companies take advantage of these gaps in the law, use new strategies to move work outside of protection, whether that's contracting out, using temporary agencies, misclassifying people as self-employed, so that we're seeing conditions deteriorate across entire industries. So I want to tell you about one of our members, Lilia, who contacted the Workers' Action Centre after she was paid less than minimum wage for over 6 months working for a cleaning company. She was paid less than minimum wage because she was classified as self-employed, even though she went to a job every day, followed the instructions of a boss, followed the hours she was given, used the tools of that employer. She was called self-employed, that she had her own company. She took on this company. She went to the Ministry of Labour, she fought back, and she won her wages. But what about the other cleaners in that company and other companies around the city that may not have that opportunity to speak out? We know that people, by working together, are able to improve working conditions, whether it's on an individual basis to make a complaint with support from an organization, or by coming together. That's why we have a minimum wage. That's why we have basic labor standards. So our members join organizations like ours and do the best to meet with other workers, to discuss their working conditions, to seek improvements and ways to make change. And we've seen successes. We've seen changes as a result of this organizing. One of the examples is changes that were made to provide more protection for temp agency workers. So this is an example of why workers need to be able to get together to talk about the conditions they face without fear of reprisal and to be able to organize for change. And that's why we're supporting Bill 77. This bill would modernize the Labor Relations Act which was written in a time of large workplaces, one work location, direct employment relationships, and long-term employment. By contrast, today's service sector, Lilia's boss making up one of the critical parts of that, which makes up some 53% of the labor market, is characterized by low wages, low rates of unionization, job instability, multi-location work, and locations where people are separated from each other, smaller workplaces, and more contracting out. In this new labor market, workers are more likely to experience violations of their legal rights to health and safety and to minimum employment standards compared to unionized workers. So Bill 77 provides some necessary, if modest, adjustments to reflect this disturbing trend towards low-paid, part-time, temporary work by making it safer for workers to organize and unionize. I know we've been hearing about the different amendments. I'll just review them very quickly and then speak more specifically about the provisions around successor rights. Bill 77 amendments include making sure that representation votes, once a union applies for certification as a bargaining unit, be held at a neutral site, which could be in or near a workplace or could involve representation votes conducted electronically or by phone, as we've been discussing. To ensure access to voting locations should be convenient, even among a workforce that may be geographically dispersed, and that ballots are cast in a neutral way, as neutral way as possible to ensure maximum participation to truly reflect workers' will. Bill 77 ensures that workers whose jobs are terminated or whose work hours are changed during an organizing campaign are reinstated to their jobs and previous terms of work pending a hearing, ensuring that they are considered innocent until proven guilty and that employers cannot just fire a worker for exercising his or her democratic right to organize or to support a union or union drive. I think just to make sure I can speak about successor rights, I won't speak about some of the other changes as my colleagues at the Parkdale Community Legal Services will address that shortly. I want to talk about the successor rights provisions. These provisions would ensure that successor rights for the contract service sector means that those employees, security cards, food service workers, and cleaners could have the same successor rights as other workers in Ontario. This provision would make a huge difference to the lives of many workers that we work with. I want to share another example of a group of workers who contacted us at the Workers' Action Centre. They were working for a private security company at a public institution. They had worked in these jobs for over 20 years, but every few years that company would switch and the contract would go to a new company. So where they started in a unionized job initially, that job soon became a non-unionized job as the contract switched every few years. And not only that, not only losing the protection of a union, they also, every time the company shifted, small changes in their wages and working conditions would occur, to the degree that after 20 years, this group of workers were fired. They, despite the fact that they had been there for so long, working in one location, working in a public institution, and not choosing to change employers, they had lost their job, they had no job security, and no guarantee over that the conditions that they had signed up for at the beginning of their employment would continue. We support Bill 77 because we believe that this would bring in a small but very necessary change to better protect Ontario workers. We recommend, however, that the bill be amended to include all contract services provided directly or indirectly by or to a building owner, management, or occupant. So this would ensure that other types of building contract services, such as, for example, parking lot services, or other services that don't currently fall under this neglected category, but yet at some time in the future could be part of a building service as employers look for new ways to reorganize work to bypass regulatory protections. Essentially, we believe that this protection should be expansive in scope rather than limited. And adding on that, we feel that these kinds of amendments and extensions of successor rights should also be included and extended to the Employment Standards Act in this sector, as was initially proposed under Bill 40. So just to close, we are facing a crisis in Ontario. We are facing restructuring of our economy that is pushing more and more workers into low-wage, precarious jobs. The proposals that are before you today the amendments to the Ontario Labour Relations Act are very modest, but they will have a significant impact on workers in low-wage and precarious work. So we're here today to ask you to stand with workers in Ontario and to support this bill. Thank you very much.